Hi everyone, Meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather. Starting out with our flying weather for Thursday morning. There's that stream again of all that moisture and warmer air going aloft all across the western part of the state. So we're looking at some IFR conditions right along the western Brooks Range on up into the Chukchi Sea, also the Seward Peninsula, down across the western coast, marginal VFR into Bristol Bay, IFR crossing the Pribilofs and the central Aleutians as well. And then we have some marginal VFR out over the Gulf of Alaska. Continuing to Thursday afternoon, that marginal VFR, still some marine stratus out over the Gulf of Alaska, but the IFR is actually increasing again, western slopes of the Brooks Range on up in the Chukchi Sea, all across the western coast, down across the eastern Aleutians now, and marginal VFR conditions all along the Alaska Peninsula and the rest of the Aleutians. Then for Friday morning, that same area, again, looking at the western part of the Brooks Range on up into the Arctic Ocean. Also we have all across the Seward Peninsula, down across the west coast. Unalakleet looks like it's going to be in marginal VFR conditions. Down into Bristol Bay now, and also including the Pribilofs, and then along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range in the volcano area. And then some marginal VFR conditions out over the Gulf. Then we're getting a bit of a switch Friday afternoon as the winds aloft become more southwesterly. So we're looking for the eastern Brooks Range to get some IFR conditions. Still lots of marginal VFR across the western portions of the state, marginal VFR into the Alaska Range. We're also seeing IFR conditions all along the southwest coast, including Bristol Bay. Some downslope on the backside of the Alaska Peninsula, but now you can see some IFR conditions have moved up to Kodiak, all across the eastern Aleutians, and then also we have some IFR conditions for the Gulf of Alaska, still not hitting the Panhandle. So now let's go through our past conditions. Starting out with Anaktuvik, we're expecting VFR becoming IFR and expect some turbulence in the afternoon. Same thing for Adigan Pass, turbulence in the afternoon, and we're looking for VFR becoming IFR conditions. For Lake Clark and Merrill, both VFR, but we're expecting for turbulence, particularly in the western parts of the passes. And then turbulence, especially west for Rainy Pass, but then when we get to Windy Pass, a VFR, but not expecting nearly as much turbulence. And then also for Isabel Pass, VFR, Mentasta Pass, VFR, Tahitna Pass, VFR, Portage, marginal VFR with a little moisture crowding up in that area. Chilkoot and White Pass, both VFR. So now looking at our freezing levels, starting out in the east, the surface freezing level starts to rise up, covering some of the inland areas, but still remaining pretty far to the south. But you can see that 2,000-foot contour is now well into southwestern Alaska as that air rises up with all that moist and warm air, although this is still a wintertime air mass. Then 4,000 feet out over the Gulf, including the Kenai Peninsula, and then 4,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula. Looking out west, it's really down to the surface of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, 2,000 feet finally when you get down to Unalaska. So this sets up our icing. We've included a large area for the west of isolated moderate, starts to ramp up from 6,000 to 14,000 feet, higher up as you get down crossing the Aleutians and the southern Alaska Peninsula. But along the west coast, expecting that area of moderate, 4,000 to 10,000 feet. And then finally, as you get up to the western slopes of the Brooks Range, surface to 6,000 feet. So for our jet stream, first of all, it's pretty cranked up with an upper level high over just the southern end of the Kenai Peninsula, and then a jet max of 120 knots up at 30,000 feet, And then we have just a little bit of northerly flow aloft, which is causing the good weather over the Panhandle. 75 ramping down to 65 knots. Then not much wind to speak of for southeast Alaska, but as we get over in the west, we have several bands of anywhere from about 40 ramping up to about 60 knots. That's in that southwesterly flow aloft, out ahead of a low pressure system over the eastern Bering Sea. High pressure ridge still keeping that flow anticyclonic as you go over to the Alcan. But look for those bands of wind which are causing the turbulence that we're going to be talking about here. And 3,000 foot winds, a good 50 to 55 knots over southwestern Alaska, due out of the due south, and that sets up our turbulence forecast. Got a little bit of turbulence, surface of 3,000 feet, considerable moderate over the far western Aleutians. But then as we get to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, all the way up to the Kotzebue area and also the western slopes of the Brooks Range, we have considerable moderate, starting out about surface to 6,000 feet, and then as you get further up, about surface to 8,000 feet as those jet maxes peter out and cause a lot of surface turbulence that is transferred down to momentum to the surface. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the aviation weather, and please file a flight plan and stay flying out there.